Welcome to Discovering. It's time for our last visit with John and Victoria Youngworth. Our birch bark canoe is ready to meet the water for its maiden voyage.
Here comes the true storm. This is the fruit of the labors. We go for a test drive.
Sit back and relax. It's Monday night and time for Discovery.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
It began with a piece of birch bark rolled out on the ground.
Maybe 1 in 1,000 trees has the kind of bark that you need for that kind of stuff.
We met John and Victoria Youngworth at their home in the wilderness of the UP.
Ever since I can remember, that's all I've ever wanted to do, was to live in the middle of the woods.
I definitely over the years feel like I without even knowing, I was developing the skills that it takes to live like this.
It was they who would transform this piece of birch bark, along with various pieces of the woods around them, into a canoe.
We just pull a few roots from each tree. We don't take a whole lot from any tree. It doesn't damage the trees.
But they didn't do it alone. Nature made its contributions. The trees provided the bark, as well as the roots and pitch that would bind it all together. The river did its part by making all of those pieces workable. A bit of bear fat, a byproduct of the hunt for food. Each piece collected, worked, shaped, formed, and handcrafted into something man-made, something usable, something beautiful, by the hands and hearts of John and Victoria, who build these canoes the traditional way, the way their Ojibwe Indian predecessors did in this same region many years ago. So now we've come to the end. It's time for this work of art to meet its waiting partner, the water that helped create it.
Did a little paint job on there with some red ochre, which would have been back in the day, or would have been just the red clay. This little design actually was on a 100-and-some-year-old canoe that we did a restoration on. And I thought that looked pretty nice, pretty simple, just decorated up a little bit. We had to do a couple of lashings on the end here. The gunnel cap is pegged up to this point, but then it gets skinny. Everything's getting skinny down here, so this is just held on with lashings in these points here. The Rootmeister, whoever does the lashings, this is their little place to sort of show off. I mean, obviously it is a showing off, but this is a sort of little bit of artistry. Just like the gunnel assembly inside here is the woodworkers, the woodwrights' little signature. Of course it gets buried, but that's quite all right. I know it's there.
If you're going to build a canoe from nature, it doesn't hurt to be part of nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of romance. I suppose I've always romanced being deep in the forest and just looking after things my own way, figuring out for yourself. That's very appealing. I've never done well working for anyone else, so I've been self-employed since I was about 20 years old. And then when we were looking for the place, I got my hands on some old, they weren't even old at the time, it was the DNR maps for possible wolf reintroduction programs. And it had the road density graphed out over the whole this end of the state. And I looked on that, and it was very obvious where all of the cool places were that didn't have road density.
Yes.
Because I'd much rather walk or paddle around a place than have to drive from here to there. So much more satisfying to go deer hunting out your back door, go fishing out your door.
And this is the biggest roadless area. Oh, I don't know.
There's some swamps that are bigger.
Yeah, there's not very many roadless areas anymore, but
They're pretty rare. They should be kept left just to be like that, just so everybody can have that experience. The plan was to find a 40 acres that had all the resources you need to build your shelter, keep the shelter warm, to take care of your fuel needs, and the surrounding environment would have all of the basic foodstuffs that you need, all of your meat and fish.
and water.
And good water, yeah, for sure. Well, Michigan's blessed with good water just about everywhere. So instead of having to make money to pay for heating or food or water or the moving of those things in your plumbing and all of that, just go directly to where the resources are and just go get them yourself, and then your exercises be built right into your life. So that, like, I'm basically lazy. I'm not going to go and exercise. But when the house is out of water, I'll certainly go down to the creek and fill up a couple of buckets every other day, or I'll have to go split and cut firewood, go hunting, go fishing, all of that. That keeps you in shape, whether you like it or not.
And we are in a fairly remote spot that we can't actually drive to. We have to walk the last bit of our trail in the summer, and in the winter we have to ski or snowmobile quite a bit further. So that kind of makes you think about what you want to bring to your house. Is it worth carrying or not? I often see things when I'm out and about and think, oh, that would be nice, and then I'm like, no, not carrying that all the way home.
That's definitely not worth it.
Yeah.
The idea too was to try to we look for the wildest place in our state. Yeah, we looked around at a lot of different properties and regions and stuff. And certainly the place with the least amount of road density has the least amount of fish and game as well. They kind of go together. The best fishing and hunting is where all the farms are. But then there'd be more competition for the resource. So here at least we don't have to worry about competition.
Very often when people come here, they try and come up with ways to improve. Well, couldn't you do this? Couldn't you widen the trail so you could get your four-wheeler all the way up to the house? Or couldn't you make the bridge so you could drive the four-wheeler over it? Or have you ever thought of trying to get a pump and pumping the water into your house?
Yeah, because we have 12 volts.
And it's like, yes, we actually have thought of all that.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, and decided not to do any of it. But it is odd how people feel compelled to try and think
Sell
of
us.
ways to make it easy.
Traveling
easier.
salesman.
Yeah. Yes.
It's amazing how much, what a pain in the butt infrastructure is on occasion. When you need it the most, it works the least. So I'm glad to only have to rely on myself for most of that, because I get up every morning. I start up in the coldest weather. I heal all the things that break. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, obviously this one's brand new. And here's the same model, basically. This is probably 15 years of good hard use hunt, fish, camp.
That's all fish guts and blood in there, all the staining, and you can't imagine how many fish we've heaved in the middle of this. You can see where the fish go in the boat when you're fishing. And then the places where we sit, that's obviously the cleanest spot. They wear well. Really, this thing didn't even have a leak at all for at least 10 or 12 years, until after we hit a few things. It's small enough for me to solo in it, and it's big enough for us to both go on small camping trips, you know, maybe up to a couple of nights. This is our first boat that was our own personal boat after building several boats for museums. I saved all the bits and pieces up, and then one summer with all those scraps, we built this one for ourselves. So, okay, and this one here is my niece. She had a Danish boyfriend at the time who was learning the art of Iron Age wooden shipbuilding over in Norway. And they came over, and in 16 days, we knocked this out. A friend of mine had already given me, he had started a canoe and gave up on it, so he had given me a lot of the stuff, which speeded it up. I think this one's 11. Some of the things are different. It's got a lot less ribs. It's got the thwart that's, this is for tying the paddles on for portaging. So it's got the notch there so they don't slide back and forth. And it also has the different ends on here. Because once the time came when the tribes didn't need to announce who they were by the shape of the ends, they pretty much all went to this end here, which is a little simpler to make. Doesn't require as many parts, and it's a simpler thing. And it's probably a little stronger in the long run for rolling the boat over. One of the reasons that these ends stick up is when you pull off to the side of the river and you want to sleep at night, there you go, it'll keep you dry. So these boats are very traditional, built in the time-honored fashion of way back, thousands of years ago. And they kind of defined the culture that used them for the primary mode of transportation. There were no roads, a few footpaths around and stuff like that, but really if you're hauling your family and grandma to the next campsite, this was your F-150 to do that. The crooked knife was called a man's knife. That was his job, to do the woodworking part. And the women did all the lashing, of course. They're built on the ground, always in a different place because you would be semi-nomadic. You can make all the stuff, get all the things you need pretty much from any nice site around all the lakes and rivers of our state of Michigan here, really the whole Great Lakes Basin. They actually made these out of spruce bark further north, you know, several hundred miles north of here. They did the same boats. It's not as good a bark. It's not, you know, you can't make as sexy a boat as these, but they still got by with a spruce bark boat. Birch bark was a big trade item to bring into places like that so they could make a boat like this. We build these on the ground outside with the stakes, just like in the old days with a handful of iron tools. You need an axe, you need a crooked knife, a straight knife, and an awl. And you could build a boat with just that. It might be a little rougher around the edges than these are here because, you know, I've got a little bitty saw for cutting this part or that. Or, you know, I could pull out a hand plane to get off a spot that was giving me a little problem. Those 4 tools, you need 4 bits of iron to keep your life on the move. You can make your toboggans, your houses, your bows and arrows. Everything could be made with that kit as well as your firewood. And your straight knife, well, that cuts up your deer and all your animals. These designs have been around for millennia. There really isn't anything to improve on what you see here. This is the real deal. We've come up with a lot of new materials and durability and stuff like that and production methods, but there are no better designs than these. You can take all the design features and mix and match, but basically all you've done is exchange for a modern machine-made life. This boat here can do everything except smash into rocks, which a plastic boat can do. This one here, you have to get out and walk around. All right, well, you slow your life down a little bit. That sounds like a good idea. People pay money to learn how to slow down. This boat makes you slow down. A little slippery down there. Off to adventure. Hey, baby, you want to get a bath? Here comes the true serum. This is the fruit of the labors. go for a test drive. Take it for a little spin, decide whether or not it's good to go. I think she's good. Oh yeah. Ready. Ah, how sweet it is. This is what it's all about.
For me, this journey started back in August. It took about 1,600 miles of driving, a few miles of walking, and many hours spent at John and Victoria's home in the wilderness. On my first trip, my priority was of course to film, but that immediately changed. I looked forward to each coming trip with more and more anticipation as I slowly became addicted to the peace and quiet of their secluded paradise.
We just need our camping gear and a shotgun.
To share a lifestyle with everybody on all the humans on the planet could all share forever. Now that's sustainable. Back then, I just called it common sense. Always been apparent, really, that modern technologies come and go. There's always a heyday of everything, and then that kind of peters out, and you move into another phase. So I never wanted to hang my coat on the hook of just being totally dependent on everything being provided for, or you just work for this and then you can go get everything you need, because those days were ending already by the time I was growing up. So the kind of things that we have learned to do, to be a wood ride and to hunt and trap and fish and camp and make all your own gear and stuff like that, that was just natural. And it doesn't hurt to be poor. If you want something, you have to go make it.
And with this paddle design, when the water's shallow, you hold it in this part here. And also, no matter where you grab the paddle, you don't have to look at it. You know exactly how it's oriented. So when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
It was important once we had the children that they knew how to do some of these things as well. And even though now as adults they haven't necessarily adopted the same lifestyle that we have, they have the skills necessary that they could, and they do. You know, they definitely fall back on some of those skills sometimes. But we're not survivalists. We're not looking to survive some kind of Armageddon that everybody else is not going to survive. We're just trying to live a lifestyle that could continue on beyond any kind of disaster or the slow ending of, you know, the current system that we have, and hopefully, you know, being able to pass on those skills to other people too.
The whole idea of survivalism is a pipe dream anyway. We're either all going to make it or we're all not going to make it.
Yeah.
Nobody stands alone.
Though many of us may not choose a lifestyle such as this, it's good to know it's there. It's a possibility. It's good to know that here in the Upper Peninsula, places still exist where a person can find solitude and live life on his or her own terms. A place where the rules are dictated by nature and where satisfaction is real. A place where all that really matters is what really matters.